Some memories stay bright no matter how many years pass. For me, the clearest one is the warm summer afternoon when my grandmother sat beside me on the old wooden swing behind her house. I was only 10 years old, but that moment would shape the rest of my life. Grandma's backyard was my favorite place in the world. Tall maple trees surrounded the yard, their leaves whispering softly in the wind. The smell of fresh lemonade and flowers drifted through the air. Whenever life at home felt unfair, Grandma's house felt like a safe place where everything made sense. And life at home often felt unfair. My older sister, Melissa, had always been the favorite. She got new clothes every season, the newest phone whenever it came out, and endless praise from my parents for even the smallest accomplishments. Meanwhile, I learned early that being quiet and responsible didn't attract much attention in our house. But Grandma noticed, she always noticed, that afternoon she watched me carefully as I pushed the swing gently with my feet. "You've grown so much this year," she said with a soft smile. I shrugged, I guess. Grandma tilted her head. "Something's bothering you?" She had that ability. She could read my emotions faster than anyone else. I hesitated before answering. Melissa got another new laptop yesterday. Dad said it's because she needs it for school. Grandma raised an eyebrow. "And you?" "I'm still using the old one from middle school," I said quietly. Grandma didn't say anything for a moment. She simply reached over and squeezed my hand. "You deserve just as much as anyone else in this family," she said gently. I didn't fully understand why her words sounded so serious. Then she said something that completely surprised me. "I want to tell you a secret." My eyes widened immediately. Grandma rarely used that tone unless something important was coming. "A secret?" I asked. She nodded and leaned slightly closer. "I've set something aside for you," she explained. "A small inheritance fund." I blinked in confusion. "What's that?" "It's money I've been saving," she said patiently. "Money that will belong to you when you're older." Am I 10? Your old brain struggled to process what she meant. "For me?" I asked. "Yes," she said warmly, "for your future." She explained that she had created an account that would slowly grow over the years. The money wasn't meant for toys or small things. It was for something important later in life, college, a home, or anything that would help me build a good future. "But you won't get it right away," Grandma added. When you turn 21. That sounded incredibly far away. "Why so long?" I asked. "Because by then you'll be old enough to decide how to use it wisely." She explained that my parents would manage the account until that day. They would simply keep it safe while it grew over time. I trusted her completely, and if Grandma trusted my parents to handle it, then it must have been safe. Grandma smiled when she saw the curiosity on my face. "It may not seem like much right now," she said, "but one day it could help you start your life." I remember hugging her tightly. "Thank you, Grandma." She hugged me back and whispered something I didn't fully understand back then. "I just want things to be fair." For the next 11 years, I believed that promise with my whole heart. Whenever my parents talked about money, they would casually mention that my future account was doing well. They always said it was growing and that I shouldn't worry about it, so I didn't. I focused on school. I worked hard, earned good grades, and dreamed about the day I would go to college without drowning in student debt. Meanwhile, Melissa's life became more and more luxurious. When she turned 16, my parents bought her a shiny red car. When she went to college, they paid for her expensive apartment instead of a dorm. She always had money for vacations, shopping trips, and weekend parties. Sometimes I wondered how my parents could afford all of it. But whenever the thought crossed my mind, I remembered Grandma's words. "Your future is taken care of." I believed that promise for 11 years. What I didn't know was that while I was dreaming about my future, someone else had already been spending it. And the truth wouldn't come out until one simple phone call changed everything. By the time I turned 21, the promise my grandmother had made years earlier still lived clearly in my mind. That small inheritance fund had quietly shaped many of my dreams. Whenever college bills felt overwhelming or my part-time job barely covered rent and groceries, I reminded myself that eventually things would get easier. Grandma had planned for my future. The night before my birthday, I barely slept. Turning 20, one meant more than just another candle on a cake. It meant the inheritance account would finally belong to me. The next morning, I decided to ask my parents about it. They were sitting at the kitchen table when I arrived. My mother was flipping through a grocery store flyer while my father scrolled through his phone. It felt like an ordinary morning, but my heart was pounding. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. My mother looked up. "Happy birthday." "Thanks," I replied. I hesitated before adding, "I actually wanted to talk about something." My father set his phone down slowly. "What is it?" "The account Grandma made for me," I said. "The inheritance fund." For a brief moment, everything went silent. My parents exchanged a quick glance. Something about that look made my stomach twist. "I'm 21 now," I continued carefully. "Grandma said I'd be able to access it when I turned 21. Neither of them answered immediately. My mother folded the grocery flyer slowly, as if buying time. Finally, she sighed. "About that," she began. My heart sank instantly. "What about it?" I asked. My father leaned back in his chair and rubbed his forehead. "The money isn't there anymore," he said. At first I thought I had misheard him. "What do you mean it's not there?" "It's gone," he replied flatly. The room suddenly felt colder. "How can it be gone?" I asked. "Grandma set that money aside for me." My mother spoke quickly, as if trying to soften the blow. "Well, things happened over the years. There were expenses, family needs, I repeated. My mind raced, trying to understand what she meant. Medical bills, emergencies. My parents looked uncomfortable again. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "Your sister needed help," he said. I stared at him. "What?" "Melissa had a lot going on," my mother explained. "College tuition, housing, transportation. Those things are expensive." The words slowly began to sink in. "You used my inheritance for Melissa." My mother winced slightly but nodded. It was still staying in the family. I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. "How long?" I asked quietly. Neither of them answered right away. "How long?" I repeated, louder this time. My father looked down at the table. "Over the years. 11 years. I asked. My silence must have confirmed the answer. My hands started shaking. All the things Melissa had received over the years suddenly replayed in my mind. The brand, new car, the expensive college apartment, the shopping trips, the vacations. I had always assumed my parents were simply more generous with her. But now I understood the truth. They weren't using their money. They were using mine. "You spent my entire inheritance," I said slowly. "It wasn't like that," my mother insisted. "Then what was it like?" I asked. She needed it more. My father said firmly. Those 5 words hurt more than anything else. She needed it more. "So you just decided it was okay to take money Grandma left for me and give it to her?" My father shrugged slightly. "It all stayed within the family." I stared at them in disbelief. "That wasn't your decision to make?" My mother's voice grew defensive. "Your sister was struggling. We had to help her. And I wasn't struggling." I asked. Neither of them responded. The silence said everything. For 11 years my future had been slowly drained away, and they didn't seem to think they had done anything wrong. I stood up from the table, my chest tight with anger and disbelief. "You should have told me," I said quietly. My father shrugged again. "It's done now." Maybe they thought the conversation was over. Maybe they believed I would simply accept it. But there was one person who had never been asked about any of this. One person who had created the inheritance in the first place. Grandma. And as I walked out of the house, one thought kept repeating in my mind. She deserved to know the truth. For 2 days after the conversation with my parents, I barely spoke to anyone. I walked through my routine like a ghost, going to work, coming home, staring at the ceiling at night while anger and disbelief twisted inside my chest. 11 years. For 11 years my inheritance had slowly disappeared while I believed it was still waiting for me. Every memory of Melissa's expensive lifestyle, now felt like another reminder of what had been taken from me. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was the betrayal. My parents had known the truth the entire time, and they never once thought I deserved to know. On the third night, I finally picked up my phone and stared at Grandma's contact number. My finger hovered over the call button. I hesitated. Grandma was getting older. I didn't want to upset her. Maybe telling her would only cause unnecessary stress. Maybe it was better to let it go and move on, but another thought quickly pushed that idea away. She deserved to know. That inheritance wasn't just money. It was something she had carefully saved and planned for years. She had trusted my parents to protect it. They hadn't, so I pressed the call button. The phone rang twice before she answered. "Hello." Her voice was soft but cheerful, exactly the way I remembered it. "Hi, Grandma," I said. "Well, if it isn't my favorite grandchild." She laughed gently. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." Hearing her voice almost made me lose my courage. "Thank you," I said quietly. "You sound tired." She noticed immediately. "Is everything okay?" Grandma had always had that ability to sense when something was wrong. I swallowed. "There's something I need to tell you." The warmth in her voice shifted slightly. "What is it?" I took a deep breath and began explaining everything. At first, the words came slowly. I told her about my birthday conversation with Mom and Dad. I explained how they said the inheritance account was empty. Then I told her why. The car Melissa got when she turned 16, the apartment during college, the vacations, the shopping sprees, all paid for with money that was supposed to be mine. When I finally finished speaking, there was silence on the other end of the phone. A long silence. For a moment, I wondered if the call had dropped. "Grandma?" I asked softly. Her voice returned, but it sounded completely different now. "Calm, cold, are you telling me," she said slowly, "that your parents gave your inheritance to your sister?" "Yes." Another pause followed. Then she asked one more question. "Did they tell you when they started taking the money?" "They said it happened over the years," I replied. "Since I was about 10, the same age when she had told me about the inheritance." I could almost hear her processing the timeline in her mind. When she spoke again, the softness was gone. "That money was never theirs to touch." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I set that account up with legal instructions," she explained firmly. "Your parents were only supposed to supervise it. They were not allowed to withdraw anything unless it was directly for you." My heart started beating faster. "So they weren't allowed to use it?" "Absolutely not." I sat up straight, "But they said it was family money." "It was not family money," Grandma said sharply. "It was your money." Her anger wasn't loud, but it was powerful. "I trusted them to do the right thing," she continued. "Clearly that was a mistake. Grandma, I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I didn't want to upset you." "You didn't upset me," she replied. "They did." There was a brief pause before she spoke again. "Do you still have any documents about the account?" "I might," I said. "Why?" "Because I'm calling my lawyer tomorrow morning." My breath caught in my throat. "Lawyer?" "Yes," she said calmly. "What your parents did may not just be unfair. It may be illegal." The word illegal echoed in my mind. Suddenly the situation felt much bigger than a family argument. "Don't worry," Grandma said gently, her voice softening again. "We're going to fix this." For the first time since my birthday, I felt something other than anger. Hope, because for the first time in 11 years, someone was finally standing up for me. And my parents had no idea what was coming next. 2 weeks after my call with Grandma, the first letter arrived. It came in a thick white envelope with a law firm's name printed neatly in the corner. My parents were sitting at the kitchen table when the mail was dropped through the slot in the front door. My mother picked up the envelope casually at first, but the moment she saw the lawyer's letterhead, her expression changed. "What is this?" she muttered. My father looked over her shoulder as she opened it. As her eyes moved across the page, the color slowly drained from her face. "What does it say?" he asked. She handed the paper to him without speaking. He began reading. Within seconds, his eyebrows shot up. "What the hell is this?" I already knew. Grandma had kept her word. The letter explained that the inheritance fund she created had strict legal conditions attached to it. The money had been placed in a protected account specifically for me, and my parents had only been given temporary authority to manage it until I turned 21. They had never been allowed to spend it, not for themselves, not for my sister, not for anything unrelated to me. The letter listed every withdrawal made from the account over the past 11 years, every transfer, every expense. The numbers were shocking. What started as a modest inheritance had been drained piece by piece over more than a decade. But because of interest and investment growth, the amount they now owed was significantly larger than what they originally took. The final number sat at the bottom of the page in bold print. My father read it twice before looking up. "They expect us to pay all of this back?" he asked in disbelief. My mother's voice was tight with panic. "This must be some kind of mistake." "It's not," I said quietly. Both of them turned toward me. "You told her?" my father demanded. "Yes." His face darkened immediately. "You had no right to involve her." I almost laughed at the absurdity of that statement. "It was her money," I replied. The next few weeks turned the house into a battlefield. More letters arrived. Phone calls from lawyers followed. Grandma's attorney had already gathered detailed records showing exactly where the money had gone. Every purchase linked to Melissa had been traced back to the inheritance account. The evidence was overwhelming. There was no way to deny it. At first, my parents tried to argue. They claimed the money had been used for family support. They insisted that since Melissa was part of the family, it shouldn't matter who benefited, but legally it mattered a lot. Grandma's lawyer made that very clear. The inheritance had been legally designated for me alone. Using it for someone else counted as financial misconduct. Eventually, the pressure became too much. My parents had two choices: repay the full amount or face legal consequences that could become much worse. They chose to repay it, but that decision came with consequences of its own. To gather the money, they had to sell several things. The first was Melissa's luxury SUV. She was furious when she found out. "You can't take my car," she shouted. My father didn't argue with her the way he usually would. "This is your fault too," he said. Next, they sold part of the family vacation property that had been sitting unused for years. Slowly, piece by piece, the money was collected. A few months later, I received the final confirmation from the lawyer. The full inheritance had been restored, and because of the legal settlement and accumulated interest, the amount was even larger than what Grandma had originally set aside. When I called her to tell her the news, she sounded relieved. "I told you we'd fix it," she said, but the real victory wasn't just the money. For the first time in my life, someone had refused to let my parents treat me as less important. They had been forced to face the consequences of their choices. Melissa rarely spoke to me after that. My parents tried a few awkward apologies, but the damage was too deep for easy forgiveness. Still, I wasn't interested in revenge anymore. Justice had already done its work. With the inheritance finally in my hands, I moved forward with the plans I had dreamed about for years, continuing my education and building a life on my own terms. And every time I thought about what had happened, I remembered one simple truth. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't anger. It's simply the truth finally being heard.